see what you did and I can clearly see your heart in me. Your love is sure and I am sure that there's nothing better. No, nothing better. You sacrificed it all just to have me with you for a lifetime. You justify me. Your heart is completely. Your heart is for me. It's for me. Everything else it will pass away, but your love is one thing that never change. It'll never fade. It'll never fade. Yeah. Everything else it will pass away, but your love is one thing that never change. It'll never fade. It'll never fade. Yeah. Your love makes me who I am, and I understand that if it wasn't for you loving me without condition, that I would completely be a lost cause. But your heart is for me. Your heart is for me, yeah. Everything else it will pass away, but your love is one thing that never change. It'll never fade. It'll never fade, yeah. Everything else it will pass away, but your love is one thing that never change. It'll never fade. It'll never fade, yeah. Why you love me, I'll never know. Perfectly imperfect, and I don't think it's worth fighting for. You show me.
Wow. The Agape Music Group again provided us with wonderful music. So the snippet you heard, Your Heart, featuring Jory and Nay, is absolutely amazing and it's definitely in my rotation. So please visit the website, agapemusicgroup.com, and Facebook and YouTube by the same name. It's a phenomenal husband and wife team, and they also have some awesome merchandise, and I finally have permission from the wife to get a hoodie. So secondly, you'll be hearing more about our Operation Backpack next week. So we're partnering with another ministry in order to distribute backpacks to our law enforcement, because sometimes they have to help people who are less fortunate than we are. We want the officers to have non-perishable items, PPE, socks, and other items for some of our brothers and sisters who may not be as fortunate as we are, or have a place to stay, or might be in transition. Now, join me in a word of prayer. Dear God, may the words of our mouth and meditation of our heart be accepted by Thy sight. O Lord our God, our Redeemer. Amen. So, let's look at tonight's lesson. It's coming from the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 21, verses 1 through 7. So, it reads this way, actually, in the Message version. Excuse me. There was a famine in David's time, and it went on year after year after year, 3 years. David went to God seeking the reason. God said, "This is because there is blood on Saul and his house, from the time he massacred the Gibeonites." So the king called the Gibeonites, called them together for consultation. The Gibeonites were not part of Israel. They were what was left of the Amorites and protected by a treaty with Israel. But Saul, a fanatic for the honor of Israel and Judah, tried to kill them off. David addressed the Gibeonites. "What can I do for you? How can I compensate you so that you will bless God's legacy of land and people?" The Gibeonites replied, "We don't want any money. We don't want any money from Saul and his family. And it's not up to us to put anyone in Israel to death." But David persisted. "What are you saying I should do for you?" Then they told the king, "The man who tried to get rid of us, who schemed to wipe us off the map of Israel, well, let 7 of his sons be handed over to us so they can be executed, hanged before God at Gibeah of Saul, the holy mountain." And David agreed, "I'll hand them over to you." the king spared Mephibosheth, who was the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of the promise David and Jonathan had spoken before God. But the king selected Armoni and Mephibosheth, the two sons that Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, had borne to Saul, plus the 5 sons that Saul's daughter Merab had borne to Adriel, son of Barzillai, the Meholathite. He turned them over to the Gibeonites, who hanged them on the mountain before God. All 7 died together. Harvest was just getting underway, the beginning of the barley harvest, when they were executed. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. They broke it, but you, yes you, have to deal with it. It's a really interesting title. They broke it, but you have to deal with it. They're on the corner selling drugs. You have nothing to do with it, but you have to deal with it. They're shooting up the neighborhood. You have to deal with it. They're arguing. Nothing to do with you. You have to deal with it. In fact, let me just talk about the main topic at hand. This novel coronavirus has taken 420,000 lives in the U.S. alone. We have been told to social distance, wear masks, wash hands, avoid crowds, stay home, clean, disinfect, sanitize, on and on and on. Now, it was first reported having its genesis in the Wuhan province of China. Unsuspecting citizens and travelers alike contracted the virus and unwittingly spread it across the world. Now, this virus, it'll steal your ability to breathe. It'll cause headaches, coughing, pneumatic tendency, stress, worry, and ultimately death. It has stolen our way of doing things. We wear masks everywhere we go. We try to stay away from each other, social distance. We don't shake hands. We don't visit family or friends. It has affected our economy, the way our children attend school. It has definitely closed our businesses. We've lost jobs. And it really seemed like before these things came along, everything was fine. I don't know of any human being who would want to wish this virus upon anybody. I'm not convinced that somebody was in a lab and made it. Somebody dropped the ball somewhere. And with poor decision making, it has broken our way of life. You didn't do it. You didn't break it. But you have to deal with it. Now look at the transition of our governments. One administration left a booming economy and the next one inherited it. Stock market was climbing to historic heights. Unemployment had reached record level lows, and poverty was beginning to see some decline, while average wages began an incline. Then out of nowhere, it was all lost, with the country, even the world, shutting down. You didn't mess it up. You didn't break it. Someone else did, but you have to deal with it. This is not unlike what happened in this Bible lesson in the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 21. We find a great king, David, who inherited a burgeoning nation. His army was unparalleled. The economy was amazing. Now, he faced a major scandal. We all know about David and Bathsheba, but he kept on going. He faced some major family drama between his sons and kept on going. Then it hit, a famine. This was not just any famine. This was a 3-year famine. So typically when we think of famine, we know that there's a shortage of food, a lack of food in a certain area. But that's only an after effect of some other issue. Sometime there's government instability. Maybe something went wrong with the crops. Maybe something went wrong on the farm. Maybe the animals that are used for food are diseased. There could be a natural disaster, even war. But in this case, it was sustained for 3 years. But don't miss it now. The famine is an after effect of something else. None of the citizens caused the famine personally. No ordinary citizen caused infighting in the government. No one person outside of maybe starting a fire could cause all the crops not to grow. So animals live in environments that sometimes breed disease. And they breed the opportunity for sickness. There is no man, woman, boy, or girl that could cause a tornado, a hurricane, a tsunami, a flood, or an earthquake. Somebody, oh yes, somebody dropped the ball somewhere. Somebody up high saw the signs coming and didn't do anything about it. Now, can I submit to you today that sometimes you are dealing with things in your life that you may not be responsible for, but you are suffering the after effect of somebody else's actions. Now, let's look a little bit further before we unpack all that. Now, as David began to look at what was causing the famine, he checked a list. He consulted with his cabinet, his economists, the professors, the doctors, and the scholars. He even checked in with the preachers. He did not get an answer. Only after seeking God in this manner did he learn what was going on. So can I pause parenthetically to let you know that we have to get out of seeking the answer first from other humans. We need to take time to go to God in prayer. Doesn't have to be anything long, just a simple question. Oh God, give me the wisdom to figure this out. Now God told David there was blood on the house of Saul. That was the outgoing administration, for trying to kill off the Gibeonites. That was a nation of people who had established a treaty with the nation of Israel. Now Israel was supposed to provide support and protection to this smaller Gibeonite nation. Now this is not so peachy keen here, because the Gibeonites need to be examined. If you look in the Old Testament book of Kings, chapter 9, these jokers realized that the army of Israel was going throughout the land wiping out everybody. Now, like anybody with some sense, the Gibeonite leaders wanted their nation to be spared. But they were already mortal enemies of the Israelites. So, they came up with an idea. They had to get Israel to promise their nation peace. But how would they approach Israel? I mean, surely they'd be killed. Even before they approached them, they could see them coming. The Gibeonite leaders decided to disguise themselves. So, they dressed up in old clothes and sandals, and they packed up rotten food. They entered the Israelite camp, and they told the leaders that they were part of a smaller nation, smaller group of people who were suffering and needed to be spared the wrath of the Israelites. So feeling pity, the Israelite leaders gave this smaller, unnamed nation their word under God that they would not destroy them. Now it was only until 3 days after the leaders realized it that they had been duped. The Israelite army went right up to the Gibeonite camp, and they were hot. But they couldn't kill them because they gave their word in the treaty. Now the Israelites enslaved the Gibeonites instead, making them wood carriers and water drawers. And I could really just kind of park right here, because the decisions of the Gibeonite leaders enslaved an entire nation for years. The young people, they had nothing to do with it, but the leaders that came before them did. They broke it, and their people had to deal with it. So now, let's get back to David. So David acts swiftly. He goes and meets with the Gibeonites, and he offers what everybody would want. Money. He proposed a stimulus package, because money solves a whole lot of problems. But really, does it? So for those of you who lay parents, spouses, children, significant others to rest, did the life insurance money really fill the void in your heart? And after a car accident, did the money fully repair the shock, the injury, and the trauma of the accident? Getting some employment, or even now a stimulus check here and there, does that really help you get rid of the uncertainty that after I spend this money, after I pay my bills, after I go out to eat, after I buy the TV, do I have a job? Do I have the guarantee to work somewhere? Or do I have income to start a business? They did not want money because you can get money. What they wanted was vindication. They were at the mercy of someone's poor decision. Yes, the stimulus check David offered would have been great, but the stimulus check didn't erase the subjugation they were under. They were still serving as slaves under the Israelites. They wanted to be made right, they wanted to be made whole, and they wanted to be free. Now these people watched as their family members and their friends were murdered by King Saul, who was supposed to have been their friend. They sat by and they watched as their children were discriminated against because of their nationality. No easy way into college, no easy way to get a job. All you could do was work in the field. Their men who were leaders in their communities, who were probably smart men, learned men, worked the fields, and women ended up doing what women do. plus having to serve the Israelites. Now in his zeal to be the man and be the most powerful king of the area, Saul turned his back on friendship for his own personal ambitions. He turned his back on friendship for power. He turned his back on friendship because he wanted other people to see him as strong. He turned his back on friendship for the potential for other people to be allies. You don't hear me. He turned his back on people he already had a relationship with because of his pride. He wanted Israel, a nation of people who had already been oppressed and been enslaved, to be great again. He wanted his people to have the chance to be the moral majority. After all, the Israelites made it out of slavery and into a promised land. They pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. Now wanted to be seen, wanted to be well, and wanted to be talked about, wanted to be respected. He hurt people that he was already close to. Can you see where this is going? Can you see this? Sometimes people who are the closest to us, people who are parents, guardians, spouses, children, friends, supervisors, co-workers, they will sometimes hurt us behind our backs, and they will steal our trust and security. We never imagined it now. We never saw it coming. And guess what? Sometimes we do the same thing. They never see it coming from us. Now the Bible doesn't tell us that Saul ever made it right when he was in charge. Because of the drama he caused, God allowed David's administration to sit under a 3-year famine. Everybody else suffered because of Saul's decision. Now don't lose the setting, okay? David didn't really build anything on his own. It was all part of this transition. He walked into a great deal. This famine could have been seen as a result of political, economic, or even poor trade influences. And the Gibeonites could have just been seen as collateral damage to nation building. They didn't have anything to do with themselves being put in slavery. But see, God allowed it to happen. In God's way, he was showing David and the nation of Israel that even though they had nothing to do with the murder of the Gibeonites, that you just can't stand by when something is wrong and not make it right. You can't see political upheaval and not vote to make it right. You can't see our young people being shot down in the street and not do something to make it right. You can't see people walking around hungry downtown and not think about how to make it right. You can't sit by when you see someone and know someone who's a victim of domestic abuse and just say, well, that's their relationship, that's their problem. You have to make it right. Yes, these are some broken situations, but you have to deal with it. Now I want you to stay with me here. Now remember, this famine has been going on for 3 years. This is 3 years. 3 years ago, my home state of California had wildfires that destroyed hundreds of thousands of acres. This is 3 years. 3 years ago, Meghan Markle joined the British royal family. 3 years. 3 years ago, we were dealing with major mass shootings in schools in Texas and Florida. 3 years ago, Drake was in his feelings and Cardi B was talking about some Bodak Yellow, and we lost Aretha. We lost Kim Porter. We lost Anthony Bourdain. We were dealing with major homelessness and the onset of climate change. A lot can happen in the span of 3 years. So when you see that something is broken, you can't wait around 3 years to fix it. We've been talking about homelessness for years, but who's going to deal with it? We've been talking about climate control for years, but who's going to deal with it? We've been talking about economic disparities in our neighborhood, but who is going to deal with it? Your family has issues. Well, what family doesn't? You may not be the cause, but will you be courageous enough to deal with those issues? You know that she has a drug problem. You know it. You didn't get her started. She broke her own life up. But you have to deal with it. You know he's an alcoholic, and he's been drinking himself down every single day. You never gave him the bottle. You even talked to him. He broke up the continuity of his life. But you have to deal with it. You know that your niece and nephew are sitting up under grandma, and they ain't doing nothing all day except for smoking, watching TV, and eating up everything they can. They even have their kids and have their friends over there in the house. You didn't make the decision to have children for them. You didn't make the decision for them to move in with grandma and cause hell. But you have to deal with it. You know she has an attitude problem. And every time y'all get together, here it goes. It's always an argument. And a family can never have peace during a get-together or a dinner. In fact, you're probably happy during the pandemic time y'all ain't together because you want to deal with it. Her attitude is always broken. But you have to deal with it. Now look at David. David was responsible now for dealing with a problem that somebody else created. And the price for rectifying the problem was a high price. The Gibeonites wanted 7 of the former king's sons to be killed. Now, without getting too far and too deep in the story, David just handed them over. And then God responded to Israel's prayers. Now, I'm not advocating for human sacrifice. I'm not saying go kill somebody off. That's a problem. But this has to make you think. Life deals us many changes. Some things we are responsible for. But what about the things that we aren't? Sometimes people break it, but you have to deal with it. There were people hurt in this whole situation. From deception between the Gibeonites and the Israelites, and killing and enslaving, and now even more killing, the situation was broken, but somebody had to step up. Somebody had to step up and deal with it. What do you see that's broken? You have to deal with it. So let me give you some Bible, because I know this story kind of went crazy. You have to know that there's always hope in these situations. In Jeremiah 29:11, it says, "For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord. There's thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." So whatever you're dealing with, this can't be the worst. You've seen worse. You've been through worse. Yes, you've had too much month and too little money before, too little money before. You've had these situations happen. They need to talk about it. You got to hit it head on. Proverbs 12 and 25 says, "Heaviness is in the heart of man, and maketh the stoop a step. But a good word makes it glad." You have to talk about it. And after you talk about it and start dealing with it, look ahead to better times. Things are going to be better. 2 Peter chapter 3:13. "Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness." And I'm going to tell you something that sounds really crazy, but it's true. You can't stay up all night stressing out over this stuff. Get some sleep. Get some rest. The day is going to be upon you. Ecclesiastes 4:6 says, "Better is a handful with quietness than both the hands full of travail and vexation of spirit." Now, life deals us many changes, and some things we are responsible for, and some things we're not. Know that change is always imminent. What things can we do to deal with the stress right now? Again, hope for the best. Hope for a better outcome. Second, don't die in silence when things are going wrong. Talk about it and take some action. Third, you need to look ahead and know that there will be better times. And fourth, always rest your mind and body. Don't stress out about it. Now, above all, you may have not been the cause for any issues. And just like he did for David and Israel, God rewarded David for addressing the issues and doing his best to fix them. So let us resolve together that even though they broke it, it's our responsibility for fixing it.
Times when I'm failing, seems like I'm losing.